Every reasonable effort has been made to ensure that the content in this video is safe. But as I cannot be in the room with you, the responsibility for participating in any exercise or individual activity rests with you. If you normally modify movements due to injury, pregnancy, physical conditions, please make sure you keep doing so and use pillows, blankets, or other objects as props to support your practice. If at any time during this video you feel any unusual pain or discomfort, you should stop exercising immediately.
Hello and welcome to this video in the Introduction to Pilates series. This is the third video in the series and already we've looked at lateral breathing, engaging the core strength around the waist in the midsection and locating neutral spine. In this video, we're going to put three of those practices together: the lateral breathing, the neutral spine lying on the back in supine, and also the fastening the waist core strength. And then from there, we're going to practice some Pilates exercises. Let's come onto the mat and locate neutral spine lying in supine. It's very often helpful in the supine position for creating the neutral alignment through the spine in the neck, just to have a little bit of support underneath the back of the head. A folded towel, a folded mat, small cushion or a pillow can all work quite well for that. Bringing the spine down towards the mat, just keeping it supported, you can use the arms to come down and lengthening the spine out vertebra by vertebra through towards the crown of the head. Just checking that your support for the back of the head is in position. And then let's begin with letting the legs align with the hip joints. So we'll bring the insteps together, let the toes move outwards a little bit and bring the heels in line with the toes. Then from there, we're going to let the hips lift up and bringing the weight of the pelvis and the lower spine back towards the mat, really balancing the weight out between the right hip and the left hip. Then let's lift the ribs away from the mat, lengthen the waist and the spine in the waist back towards the head and the shoulders, and bringing the ribs in contact with the mat again, balancing the weight out through the ribcage and the shoulders, right side, left side. Let's bring the hands into the back of the head to support the weight of the head, and then allowing your spine to lengthen from between the shoulder blades, through the spine and the neck, right through towards the crown of the head, and bringing the head back to the mat, placing it into a centered position. So as you need to look at the video times, of course your head will come out of the centered position, but as soon as you're able to bring the head back into alignment so that the neck is in line with the rest of the neutral spine. Ideally, at the start of our work, we check that the legs are nice and relaxed. The thigh bones relaxed in the hip joints, the muscles around the hip joints staying relaxed, and our gluteal muscles staying relaxed. And we're going to now here think about locating the neutral spine. So that's the four natural curves of the spine. As we're ready on the exhalations, we're going to let the weight of the spine sink towards the mat. And then with the inhalations, using our abdominal muscles rather than our legs and gluteal muscles, we're going to let the spine flow through towards the neutral position. And in the neutral position, what we will feel here is that the top of the back of the tailbone is in contact with the mat. Then the crests of the hip bones, these bones here on the front of the pelvis, will be directly facing up towards the ceiling. Between the spine in the back of the waist and the mat, there'll be a little bit of space. Now it could be that your body, the back of your waist is in contact with the mat, but just check that the weight of your spine in the back of the waist isn't resting into the mat. And the spine through the back of the ribcage should be in contact with the mat. And then a fist distance between the chin and the chest, so the spine through the back of the neck is long and released. So again, on the exhalations, allowing the spine to relax into the mat, keeping the legs relaxed and the hip joints relaxed. And then breathing in, coming back into the neutral spine position, top of the back of the tailbone in contact with the mat, crests of the hip bones directly towards the ceiling, Spine through the back of the waist, not in contact with the mat. Spine through the back of the rib cage in contact with the mat. Back of the neck long and released, and we could have a fist between the chin and the chest. Front of the chin then will be parallel to the ceiling above us. So let's breathe out to relax the spine into the mat. Breathing in to direct the base of the tailbone as if to between the heels, the top of the back of the tailbone in contact with the mat, the crests of the hip bones directly towards the ceiling, the sacrum where the hips and the spine meet and the spine through the back of the waist not in contact with the mat, the spine through the back of the rib cage in contact with the mat, and that fist distance between the chin and the chest so that the front of the chin is level to the ceiling above us. So that's our neutral spine, and we can either remain in neutral spine for a few moments, or we can relax the back into the mat as we reconnect with the lateral breath so that we'll be able to engage the core strength nice and firmly about the waist. And the lateral breathing practice that has been looked at in the first video of the series works on internalizing the breathing, connecting with a sense of the breath, opening the lungs and the chest from the inside. And we begin this process of internalizing the breathing by just bringing the awareness into the space between the eyes, just above the nose, at the bridge of the nose really. So let's allow the mind's eye to come into the space between the eyes, spending a few moments to connect with that length and breadth of depth of space there. As the mind gets used to visualizing that space, allowing that space to soften, allowing it to relax, allowing it to expand and to open. And then letting the awareness travel through into the nostrils with the inhalations from the inside, allowing the muscles within the nostrils to relax, to receive the breath. And on the exhalations behind the breath, feeling again that from the inside, the nostrils are able to relax. And then we'll let the focus of the mind's eye come into the space at the back of the mouth. And as the breath comes in through the nostrils, you can feel the coolness of the breath on the skin at the back of the mouth. And allowing that pocket of space from the inside to expand and open to receive the breath. Just allowing it to soften so that it opens backwards, forwards, upwards, downwards, and receives the breath. And again, as the breath leaves, just allowing that pocket of space at the back of the mouth to relax inwards again. And let the awareness travel through now into the throat, and from the inside as the breath flows into the throat, allowing the muscles within the throat to open from the inside. And on the exhalations as the breath is leaving, allowing the muscles of the throat to soften and to relax behind the breath, and feeling that from within the neck itself, the muscles all through the neck are able to relax behind the breath. And then we're going to allow the awareness to arrive in the upper chest, focusing on the breath, expanding the upper chest behind the collarbones, out towards the shoulder joints, and back towards the shoulder blades. And on the exhalations now, we're going to sequence the breath as it leaves the body, breathing out through the nostrils, and then from the back of the mouth, from the throat, from the upper chest, mid-chest, depth of chest. And then let's bring the awareness into the mid-chest on the inhalations, so that with the in-breath from the inside, as the breath is within the chest, thinking about the breath opening the ribs away from the breastbone, from the inside expanding the rib cage into the space beneath the shoulder joints, and from the inside letting the breath expand back
towards the base of the shoulder blades and the back of the chest. And again, on the exhalation, breathing out from the top of the breath through the nostrils, then from the back of the mouth, then from the throat, upper chest, mid-chest, depth of chest, the breath leaving. As we arrive in the floating ribs region of the chest, the rib cage is wider, but however, the ribs aren't at the front of the chest. They're separating from the base of the breastbone. So as we think about breathing into the chest from the inside, we need to think about breathing wide into the sides of the floating ribs and then back. It's almost as if the ribs are in a jagged letter C shape, and we're breathing into the ends of the letter C and then the belly of the letter C. Breath is wide and it also moves back. And then with the exhalation, breathing out through the nostrils, and then the back of the mouth, and then the throat, upper chest, mid-chest, depth of chest. And we're going to try to keep this nice, wide, open passageway for the breath flowing, and keeping these long, strong exhalations flowing. And with the exhalations, we may be able to begin to feel that the muscles around the rib cage are gathering the ribs in towards the spine. There's a little bit of firmness there around the rib cage. And we may also be able to feel, as we take the mind's eye into the waist, deep into the midsection, that we're able to feel muscles deep within the midsection responding to our exhalations. And that around the back of the waist, into the sides of the waist and the front of the waist, the muscles are engaging towards the spine. We can sometimes help ourselves to feel that by putting the hands onto the waist. The thumbs on the back of the waist, the webs, this part here on the sides, and the index fingers, these fingers on the front. And with the inhalation, if you're managing to keep this deep, wide breath where the chest is expanding backwards and sideways, especially at the floating ribs, then you'll feel the effect of the breath as it arrives in your hands in the thumbs, and then in the webs, and just a little bit in the fingers. Very little sense of the breath pushing the fingers upwards. Mainly the breath moving back towards the thumbs and wide into the webs. And as you breathe out from the top of the breath through the nostrils, then the back of the mouth, throat, upper chest, mid-chest, depth of chest, should be able to feel beneath your hands that the muscles in the waist are engaging towards the spine. Now this contraction that's happening naturally, we need to intensify in order to be able to really use it in our Pilates exercises. So let's imagine a really wide belt that begins to either side of the spine. And let's say the belt's got 10 notches or 10 holes. And through 3 or 4 breaths on the exhalations, we're going to think about fastening our imaginary belt deep within the waist. So it's really the muscles within the waist we're trying to get to act like a belt, not just imagining a belt on the outside of the waist, but trying to activate these muscles like a belt or corset of strength wrapping around the spine. So keeping our long, strong exhalations leaving from the top of the breath, back of the waist, sides of the waist, front engaging. And gradually, as you feel that you've worked through to a very strong engagement on the waist, as if your belt with the 10 notches is done up to the very, very tightest notch, you're working very, very deep in and down and very, very firmly and hard. We're going to keep that deep, deep work going, but we're going to relax the belt back a little bit. So let's say it's on the 7th notch. So it's in and around 3/4 of our maximum strength, in and around. So now that we've got the waist strength working, it could be that it's already naturally supporting the spine back into our neutral spine position. But we can just double check that that's the case. So the base of the tailbone, as if you've got a little spotlight on it, shining through to between your heels. The top of the back of the tailbone in contact with the mat. The crests of the hip bones towards the ceiling. Then a little bit of space between the spine and the floor in the back of the waist. The spine through the back of the rib cage in contact with the mat, and a fist distance between the chin and the chest,
and the front of the chin level to the ceiling. Let's from here begin to challenge our core strength to maintain the spine in the neutral spine position. And to know whether or not we're actually managing to keep the spine still, it's very helpful and useful just to pop the fingertips onto the crests of the hip bones. So now, because the base of our spine is actually wedged into the back of our pelvis, the back of our hip bones, if the hips move around, we know that at the very least the spine at the base of the spine hasn't been stabilized. So it gives us a clue, in other words. So with the fingertips on the crests of the hip bones, as I breathe out my long breath like we've been practicing, I'm going to let the heel of one foot peel away from the floor and just check as I take the support of my heel out from underneath my thigh and my knee and my shin, whether or not I can keep my pelvis steady. And then with the inhalation, I'm going to return the heel to the floor. So breathing in nice and deep and wide the way we practiced, breathing out from the top of the breath, feeling your ribs gather in towards your spine and engaging your waist a little bit more firmly again, just peeling one heel away from the floor. That's the only action that's happening, seeing whether the pelvis stays stable and breathing in to return. So, and as you've breathed in, exhalation to peel the other heel away. Let your core strength engage and deepen, and then flow through, the heel lifts through, and breathing in to return. So breathing out, let your core engage, split second later, letting your heel roll away. Now you can either lift through to the ball of the foot, or you can lift through to the tiptoes. So lifting through to the tiptoes is a little bit harder, so check that the pelvis is definitely stable. Points to look out for here are that as the heel lifts up, we're aiming to avoid pushing the hips down into the floor to compensate for having lost the support of the foot. Instead, the idea is to take the strength in very firmly around the waist and beneath the waist to absorb the weight of the leg a little bit into the core strength, avoiding putting the effort into the floor. The other thing that will tend to happen sometimes is that as we raise one leg, we push the other leg into the floor to help stabilize the pelvis, not from the waist and the core strength, but from the leg below the pelvis. So we need to just keep each leg that isn't supposed to be working relaxed, and just isolate our effort to the core strength and the leg with the heel that's rising. Let's give it one more go to each side. An inhalation to prepare, exhalation to engage the core strength, peel one heel away, breathing in to return the heel to the floor, exhalation to engage the core strength, keep your spine lengthened and in neutral, and peel the heel away, and breathing in to return. Good, well done. It is a lot harder than it looks to stabilize the spine as we take the weight of the heel away from the floor. So don't worry if it felt hard or if it was very difficult to stabilize the pelvis. Just keep practicing and the skills will gradually build in. The next exercise is again going to challenge how we're able to hold on to the position of the pelvis and the neutral spine at the base of the trunk of the body. So again, we set up our neutral spine position with the belt fastened to that, let's say, 7th notch, crests of the hip bones, pubic bone level, little spotlight on the tailbone shining to the heels, top of the back of the tailbone in contact with the mat, space between the spine and the floor and the back of the waist, spine through the back as rib cage engaged to the mat, and fist distance between the chin and the chest. With this next practice, we're going to allow the weight of one leg at a time to release towards the side. And as the weight of the leg releases to the side, the tendency will be for the pelvis and the lower spine to follow the weight of the leg off to the side. But we're going to resist that from happening by really squeezing our waist in. And especially, we're going to need to squeeze the waist in on the side of the working leg each time. So it's an exhalation to release the leg to the side, keep squeezing your waist very firmly to hold your spine in position, and an inhalation to come back to the center.
So an exhalation to check that we're in neutral spine. If you can, really elongate your spine between the tailbone and the crown of the head. Direct the tailbone as if to your heels and the crown of the head as if to the wall behind you. And then as you're releasing the leg to the side, work very hard in the waist on that working hip side. Test with your fingertips that the pelvis is staying stable. Breathing in to come to the center. So it's our exhalation to elongate the spine and fasten our core strength, to release one leg to the side whilst working very hard in our midsection to stabilize the spine and the pelvis. Inhalation to come back to the center. Exhalation to lengthen the spine, check that we're in neutral, releasing the other leg towards the side, working very hard in the midsection to keep the spine stabilized, and then once again breathing in to bring the leg back up. Now, pitfalls in this exercise are that as the leg goes to the side, people little by little sink the weight of the pelvis into the floor so that it's really imperceptible that actually the hip on the working leg side is lower than on the other side. We have to be really watchful and vigilant and check quickly to know that the hips have moved, and any slight shift is where we need to basically stop, engage our core strength very firmly and come back. So even if the movement is small, if we don't actually stabilize with the space at the back of the waist and the pelvis level, we won't build up the strength that Pilates is looking for. It's not that we're not working, but it's not the specific strength we need for the Pilates. The other thing that can happen is that one leg goes off to the side and the other leg grips very, very firmly to keep the hips in place on the opposite side. There's nothing wrong with it, but it won't train the core strength. It's a different exercise from the one that we're trying to do at the moment, the side leg release. So the leg that is supposed to just be passive each time needs to stay passive. And as we allow the working leg to move towards the side, just keep checking that the space between the ribs and the pelvis stays the same, that the pelvis stays steady, and avoid any sense of the hip on the working leg side getting heavier. Breathing in to come back to the center. Breathing out, lengthen the spine, engage your core strength. As you breathe out around the ribs and into the waist, let your working leg release to the side as you keep the other leg relaxed and the knee towards the ceiling. Breathing in to return. Let's do one more to each side. Exhaling to release one leg to the side. Hold steady through the center around the spine. Breathing in to come back. Last time, core strength engages around the spine. Releasing one leg to the side, stay steady at your center. Knee of the supporting leg stays to the ceiling. Breathing in to return. And then again relaxing. Good, well done. So apart from being hard work at the waist, there's also a lot to concentrate on. Pilates really requires us to be very precise about how we're moving, and that means we have to build up a lot of body awareness. And to have body awareness, we have to be getting our mind into our bodies and observing what we're doing. And a lot of the time we have movements that we perform unconsciously without realizing, compensatory movements. We gradually have to learn how to let go of some of those when we're working with Pilates. So it might be time just to release the lower back as we've been here for a while. Just hug the legs in, releasing the lower back, circling the hips on the mat gently. And then we're going to come back and we're going to move up to the next level from the heel raise exercise that we did at the start. So we just check once again that we're in neutral. A good clue is if the nose is in line with the navel, that the spine is at any rate aligned. And then from there we check out our 2 fist distance between the feet, so we can bring the insteps together, toes go outwards as the heels stay together. Then we bring the heels in line with the toes. We just position the pelvis again, balance the weight out right side, left side. Lengthen the waist out of the hips, bring the weight of the ribs down, balance the weight out right side, left side. Let's support the head with the hands and lengthen the neck from between the shoulder blades to the crown. Checking in with our neutral spine,
top of the back of the tailbone in contact with the mat, little spotlight on our tailbone shining towards the heels, crests of the hip bones towards the ceiling, maybe level with the pubic bone, space between the spine and the back of the waist and the floor, spine through the back of the rib cage in contact with the mat, fist distance between the chin and the chest, and fastening our imaginary belt around the waist at the back, at the sides and the front, whilst we remember to keep the legs relaxed at the hip joints and the gluteal muscles relaxed. This next exercise, as we breathe out again, breathing out from the top of the breath, we need to really feel the rib cage and the muscles around the rib cage gather into the spine, the waist work firmly. We're going to peel the foot away from the floor, and if we can, continue the movement of the leg on up until the knee comes above the hip joint, a right angle at the front of the hip joint, and a right angle at the back of the knee joint. Let's breathe in here, and as you're ready again, let your spine be nice and long and in neutral. Let the ribs gather in towards your spine and the waist muscles draw in, and as the leg comes back down, keeping the pelvis steady. So again, as you're ready, an exhalation to breathe out from the top of the breath, to peel the foot away from the floor as we did before, and to continue the movement. Feel the core strength working to lever your leg up, right angle at the front of the hip joint, back of the knee. Let's breathe in again here, and once again as you're ready, breathing out to lengthen the spine. Make sure your belt is very firmly fastened underneath the back of the waist. Keep drawing your abdominal muscles down and back, and then we've returned to the floor. Breathing in here. So once again, as you're ready, an exhalation to flow the heel away on your first side. Continue to flow the weight of the leg on up, pelvis staying steady. Breathing in up here, and breathing out again to let the breastbone lengthen away from the face, the ribs funnel into the spine, the waist work really hard at the back, and the sides and the front keep pulling down and back, and the leg returns to the mat. Breathing in here, and then once again as you're ready, your exhalation to peel the heel away. See if you continue to flow the leg up from out of your core strength. Breathing in at the top of the movement, and once again breathing out to return the weight of the leg towards the mat. Now that the weight of the leg is rising, there'll be more tendency for the back of the waist to countersink into the mat as the leg comes up. So we need to work really firmly with this surrounding the spine strength, so it pulls into the back of the waist and keeps the spine in the back of the waist engaged away from the floor, from the core strength. You breathe in up here, and as the leg comes back down to the floor, what's more likely to happen on the return is that the small of the back of the waist arches away from the mat and the ribs separate. And the problem with this is it's putting a lot of pressure into the structure of the back of the spine. So ideally we definitely avoid that, keeping our waist very firmly in place, using our imaginary strong belt around the waist, crests of the hip bones stay to the ceiling, and the space between the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the hips doesn't change. So it always helps as we breathe in to have a sense of actively lengthening the spine between the tailbone and the crown. Breathing out, draw the ribs in, squeeze the waist in, keep the abdomen pulling down and back. Leg floats up, breathing in, and on the return, strength into the back of the waist, but also a lot at the front to keep the small of the back in the neutral position. Now again, with this exercise, one of the things that can happen is that the leg that isn't supposed to be working starts to tense up, and also to begin to stabilize the pelvis from below the hip, rather than stabilizing the pelvis with the muscles that are attached to the top of the hips. And for Pilates, we're aiming to use these muscles at the top of the hips. So that's the idea. It's not necessarily going to hurt you to be strong in the supporting leg, but however, it won't be training the muscles that we're looking for in the Pilates. So let's set up again once more to each side. So an exhalation to engage
the core strength around the neutral spine, knee float, breathing in, and an exhalation to lengthen your spine, engage the core strength around the spine, and to float the leg back down, breathing in. And then once again, to lengthen the spine, engage your core strength, peel the foot away first, feel that you're strong and steady, float on up, breathing in here, and once again, as you're ready, floating the leg back down. Good, well done. So that's the knee float, or sometimes called the tabletop position. And then let's have a look again at another one where we're challenging the sides of the waist to be nice and strong. On this one, what's going to happen is that the legs will sway to one side, but still keeping the feet in contact with the mat, so it's not too strong. And as the weight of the legs sway to the side, they will be pulling the spine a little bit away from the centered neutral position, and the hips will come with the spine. What we're going to do is fasten the belt so far firmly again around the waist that it brings us right back to the center. So we breathe in the center in the neutral spine position, and then again, as you're ready, as you breathe out, check that your core strength's engaged, but you're going to let the weight of the legs sway over so that they a little bit spiral the spine out of the neutral. Let's breathe in here, and then we need to squeeze the belt around the waist very, very firmly to come back to the center, just using the waist strength, legs staying quite passive. So we're in the neutral spine. Breathe nice and wide, breathing out long breath from the top of the nostrils. Allow the legs to move across. Breathing in here, and as you're coming back, squeezing around the waist. So now on this one, the legs have gone to the right. So what I'm going to need to do to really help me effectively to come back is to use the left side of my waist very firmly. Side and the back of the waist especially. Breathing in at the center again. And then breathing out, letting the legs sway towards the left side. So the right hip lifts a little bit and the spine on the right side has rolled a little bit away from the mat. And then as you're coming back from the core strength, it's especially that right side of the waist and the back of the right side of the waist that need to work to bring you back to the center. Breathing in there. Now, if you've got used to practicing the hip sways, then what you could do, instead of just relaxing the legs towards the side, is to deliberately use your waist strength, the side and the back of the waist, to bring you into this mini twist. And then breathing in here, and then on the exhalation, deliberately use your other waist to bring you back to the center. So the belt is fastened around the waist quite strongly, let's say the 7th notch. But as we need to work more intensely in the waist to sway to the side, we might need to get the strength up to about the 8th notch on the belt. And then we breathe in here. And then as we're ready to come back again, we might need the 8th, 9th notch working really intensely on the right side to get all the way back. So then we breathe here. And then using a little bit more intensity into that right side to go into your sway. Breathing in your sway. And as you have to pull back, using more intensity on that left side of your waist and back of your waist to get back to the center. Let's even up to our second side. Exhalation to sway into the mini twist. Breathing in the mini twist. And once again, lots of intensity to bring the back to the center. Good, very well done. So that's looked at 2 or 3 exercises in the neutral spine in supine. Basic exercises, although all the same challenging to coordinate and learn how to do with the Pilates method. Let's release our backs a little bit. We can hug the right leg in and towards us whilst relaxing our left leg away from us, not needing to be in neutral spine anymore, just allowing the small of your back to relax into the mat.
2 or 3 breaths here. And then let's exchange the legs, so we'll slide the right leg away and bring the left leg in, hugging it towards us, and again relaxing your lower back into the mat. Breathing, 2 or 3 breaths. And let's bring that leg in as well, and just release the hips a little bit more, circling the legs in opposite directions as we keep the lower back relatively supported by the mat beneath us. And then after all, we can always circle in the opposite direction, just releasing the lower back and the hips here. Good. And a last time. Might be a good idea to just relax our shoulders and neck a little bit. We can always fold the arms, flow the arms around and all the way through to the center. And then flowing the arms in the opposite direction, all the way around and back to the center. And let's just work once more in both directions, flowing around in a gentle way. And then as well, just flowing around opposite direction. And once again, relaxing the arms. And as you feel ready, we're going to come onto one side, just roll up and away from the side towards seated. I hope you've enjoyed that practice. Well done for starting on your Pilates journey, and look forward to seeing you again on another video. Thanks for watching.